Hi, I'm Ben Pottinger, and my student number is 17076366, and this is the presentation for the presenting slash performing showcase. So today I'm going to be talking about the goal of my project, how lockdown changed the plans, and how the production of each instrument for the EP was carried out, the ideas behind the compositional arrangement for the EP, and the improvements that I would like to make next time I take on a project similar to this. So the goal of this project was to produce a contemporary Christian worship EP that was easy to recreate as a small live band, so small churches can recreate these sounds to sound professional live. I want to sort of make use of technology and recording techniques and ways that they can achieve these sounds live. How lockdown changed my plans is in uni I would have been using Pro Tools, which I'm very much used to. That's what I've used for the whole 3 years of study, but because of the lockdown I'm only able to use Logic Pro, which is what my fiance has on her computer, and that's all I've been able to use. She has an interface, and we've got a couple of microphones together, which I'll talk about a little bit later. It makes collaboration more difficult as well, because there's people I wanted to do a live recording of a group of us playing as a band to get sort of the live feel, but obviously because of that's not able to happen anymore. And I was not able to record any acoustic drums, which add quite a lot to a live sounding EP. So I've had to use the drummer plugin and MIDI programming to replicate that to the best I can. So the first area of production was, as I said, I had to use Logic Drummer to get the sound that I wanted. I used the drummer plugin to get the vague sound I wanted, and then I dragged those into a new MIDI instrument, software instrument, and that allows you to program the drums exactly how you want them, so you can get them in the ballpark with the drummer plugin, and then you can customize them how you want them in a new software instrument. This is actually a pretty good way of doing it, because if you don't have a drummer, because the drummer plugin doesn't actually play quantized, which is nice. It gives like a live feeling, because all of the MIDI hits aren't on the beat, they're just a little bit forward behind, which gives a human feel, which is gives a really nice feeling to the sound of the drums. So the production for the keyboard, my fiance has a MIDI keyboard, so I've been using that, going straight into Logic and using a software instrument in Logic. I was sort of, a lot of the sounds are either just piano with reverb or layering synths, so like pads, quite sort of simple piano playing, because that's one of the limitations, that I'm not probably the best piano player, but I've just been learning what I can and adding that, because it's quite hard to get people together to do that at this time, but we can't do that. And I sort of use, because it's quite synthy sounds and some of it's quite bassy, all of the frequencies that I had sort of boosted a little bit in the bass, I took them away in the keyboard, because they were sort of clashing a little bit and it was sounding a bit muddy. So that was sort of around 100 hertz, 50 hertz and 200 hertz. I sort of did quite a high Q and decreased those, which helps it sit with the bass and stops them from interfering with each other, which worked really well. I sort of used pads and synths for the drivey bits, and when there was an actual piano part that I wanted to be more present, I used a piano software instrument with a little bit of reverb on there to sort of fill out the sound. An example of this is the bridge for Ever Sing Your Praises. Here it is.
I'm standing on your promises. I know you won't forsake me. When it feels like you're not there for me, I know you never leave. I'm standing.
So the production for electric guitar, I used the a Gretsch Electromatic Project as the guitar I used. The amp was a Fender Pro Junior. The various and I used various pedals, quite a lot of them. They're all not super expensive. They're quite easily accessible, which is what I wanted for the worship teams. Like, if I was going to be able to recreate this live with other bands, I didn't want to use pedals or equipment that's really hard to get hold of because it makes the sound inaccessible. So these are quite generic pedals. But what I did to in the recording process, give me more control over the effects, I split the dry signal and the wet signal. So after the overdrives, I went straight from the overdrives into the amp and used an SM57 to record the amp. But then the other half of the split signal went through all of the reverbs and delays and the tremolo into a DI box into the interface, which allowed me to record them separately and then control the wet and the dry separately when I was mixing the guitars. And this allows you to put more effects in, which fills out the sound more, but you don't lose the clarity because you have the dry signal of the guitar still. The DI I used was a Behringer Ultra DI, Ultra DI 100 into the interface. An example of the guitar being able to use sort of lead lines but being able to like fill out the sound with a reverb is the bridge of God of Impossible. A bit of technology that I used to fill out the sound is a pad. So even though the keyboards are using pads, what I did, I recorded a loop into a loop pedal of my guitar reverb. So just the wet signal, like playing some high inversions and then some low inversions into a loop pedal, which just continuously looped the sound. So it was only the root note of the key, which sort of gives a bass ambient sort of tone from everything else to build from, which when there's like some sections where it's just a vocal or just piano, it stops it from sounding so bare and a little bit uncomfortable. So an example of this is in I Am Here, the first chorus.
So come on in, come on in, come on into my presence.
So for production for the bass, I used a Soundgear 5-string bass into a Behringer Ultra DI 100. For the bass sound, I boosted the 100 Hz and 200 Hz, and that's sort of the harmonics of each other. So it gives, like, you're boosting those bass frequencies, but because they're the harmonics of each other, it sort of tricks your brain into thinking that there's actually more harmonics down the line in there, which gives a more full bass sound, but it doesn't make it sound so muddy. I also use a compressor before the EQ, and then also a bass amp bass amp designer, which is a plugin in Logic. That was both before the EQ and the compressor. I just did a little bit of compression to make the playing sound smoother, and the bass amp, I just used it to take some of the higher frequencies out and sort of boosted some of the lows again. Just the bass settled, it changed, but it just made a really smooth bass sound, which is what I wanted. For the bass, please listen to the instrumental introduction track for God of the Impossible. And listen to the sub bass I used. I used a pick on the bass, but I palm muted the string and just played it on the beat, but had the bass boosted, so it gives sort of a what sort of sub sound to the bass, which worked really well, I think. So for production for the vocals, I used a Rode NT1, which is a condenser mic that I bought off the internet for this project. It was £150, but I tried it with an SM57, which is something I already had, but I just wanted to have something with a bit of better quality, so that's why I went with this one. I wanted to add more harmonies to this project, because the vocal harmony adds so much sound, and like it fills out the sound so much, especially in live performances, which is what I want to be able to recreate this EP with bands easily. It just fills out the sound. If you don't have many instruments, if you can still have people who are playing instruments singing, which it just fills out the sound even though you don't have that many instruments. I didn't do that as much as I liked because of the lockdown. It made it hard to collaborate with people. I was able to send some of the files over to get some backing vocals, to get people to record some backing vocals, but I couldn't do that as much as I would like.
Come on in, come on in, come on into my presence, 'cause I love you. Yes, I love you. Yes, I love you. Yes, I love you. Yeah.
For acoustic guitar production, I used the Rode NT1 again. I placed the microphone by the body, sort of behind where your arm is when you're playing the acoustic, behind your right arm, sort of to pick up the bass sounds that were resonating in the body, sort of get those low frequencies. And I also, it's an electric acoustic, so I use the DI app signal, which sort of has a lot more of the clarity, so when mixing those two together I could get a bit of the clarity and get the sort of fullness of the acoustic, and that worked quite well, I think. I used a small amount of compression just to make the playing smoother again, but I wanted it to have quite a raw sound, which I think it achieved, but I just wanted to have that like live sound, which I really liked. And on that can be found on You Are Here, and that's the only track with acoustic guitar on, but I just wanted some small, like a light percussion, which is the shaker, and the tambourine, which is all MIDI programmed instruments with the software instruments for the drummer. I just sort of added the accents in by changing the velocity at the points where I wanted that, and I wanted that song to be a really stripped back song with the voices take more of the precedent, So that's what I wanted for that song.
Fear tries to take my faith. Your love leads me to your faith. And I know you are here. And I know that you will never fail. This is the truth. You are near. And I know that you will never fail. And I know.
The biggest improvements I'd like to make for the next time I did a project like this was to improve my vocal skills, because this is probably the first project I've ever really sung on properly. So I'm not very experienced at it, but it's something I want to grow in. So I did a little bit of preparation by learning some songs that some of my favourite songs in this style, and that definitely helped me. And also, I'd like to add some more vocalists. So have be able to have like sort of 4 and 3 part harmony, which we were able to achieve by getting another vocalist to record various parts just by herself, which definitely really helped. And it's sort of mixed was when I was making the tracks. I was making them just with my vocals, but after I added those other vocals in, it just really made the track sound loads better, in my opinion. So for arranging, I wanted to keep each instrument in their own range. So like for the bass, there's some places where it plays a little bit higher, but I wanted to keep it sort of in the low range because like I'm using quite a lot of reverb and effects, like especially with the keyboards and the guitars. And if I have them all playing the same range, it can sound a bit muddy and there's not much clarity. So if there was a lead line, there's more space for the piano to play low, but I didn't want it to play too high, otherwise it would clash with the guitar. And this can be fixed with EQ, which I tried to do as much as I can, but I wanted to be able to keep each instrument in their own range. And if one of the instruments was playing a more complex line, so if a guitar was doing a lead line, I would keep the piano holding more like just the chords, just to sort of hold the fullness of the sound while another instrument is doing something a bit more interesting. And then if it was the other way around, the guitar would be doing swells and filling out the space while the piano would be doing something, doing a lead line.
Bring me this far just to leave me here. I know I'm not alone.
To conclude, the goal of my project was to be able to produce an EP that is in the style of a contemporary Christian worship album, but can be recreated with 4 instruments or 4 musicians at the most, because that's what a lot of the smaller churches, they don't have the big bands that a lot of the contemporary Christian worship bands have, which is sort of can be from 10 to 20 musicians or singers. So I want to be able to write this album to be recreated by churches that don't have that many people. The lockdown limited the collaboration element of this, even though I was able to do it to some extent. It wasn't to the extent that I would have liked to. I was able to use the arranging skills of the instrument, so a lot of the parts I wanted to keep separate, so like I didn't want the guitars playing in the same range as the keyboard, so the keyboard sort of would be playing simply if the electric guitar was doing a bit more of a leady thing, and the other way around if it was more of a cute piano piece. And the biggest improvements I would like to add would be to add the acoustic drums and to improve my singing. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Ben Pottinger, and this is my EP here in his presence.
Here I am, open arms. I'm right here, my love's not gone. Here I am, open arms. I'm right here, my love's not gone. If you only believe what I say about you, you would not be afraid. If you only believe what I say about you, you would not be ashamed. So come on in, come on in, come on into my presence.